You're listening to the Fit Mind, Fit Body podcast, where we explore the connection between a fit body and positive mental health. And our big mission? It's to help 10,000 runners to develop fitter minds in the next 2 years. I'm your host, Michelle Frost. Let's get moving. Welcome to this episode of the Fit Mind, Fit Body podcast, where we talk to Tony Darsaklis about making running a lifestyle choice. Enjoy. Today on Fit Mind, Fit Body, I have a good friend of mine, someone I've known for almost 20 years through a number of children. In fact, I think we've got a couple that are a similar age. Tony Darsaklis, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Michelle.
It's really good to have you here. It was hard for us just to stop talking before I hit record. I'm like, Tony, we've got to stop. We've got to hit record. Otherwise, all this good stuff's going to be on the other side. I was really thinking about it. I was talking to Simon the other day, and I don't know a huge amount of your background beyond, in the running club and having known you that way and know the kids. And, we've been to a couple of marathon dinners and stuff together. But tell me a little bit about, where did Tony Darsaklis grow up? Tell me about that.
Yeah, I was born in Tassie, and then with my mother, we moved over to West Australia early on in my life. So
wow.
As some of my close friends know and my workmates, that I keep reminding them, I'm a West Coast Eagles supporter. So that's that link to the West Australian background, as people moan and that, as I keep saying, through those premiership years. But now I don't mention that at all. But
you're a bit quieter.
But I've always loved running from a young age, through primary school in West Australia, doing most of my schooling over there. Was always in sort of the, relays and sprinting events. And then over the years, I thought I was a sprinter, but then as I got older and, the boys were always bigger than me, then I sort of naturally because I was so skinny, I leaned into the middle distance sort of longer runs. And I was regularly in school representative teams, and at a young age played a bit of football. So that was in, West Australia. Later in life, when I did join the Navy in 1989, that was a big step, big adventure for me at that age. The running was actually at the forefront of that as well, being a love throughout that period. I was in, I used to run on the base and encourage other people to go for runs with me on the weekend, playing football as well. And actually, here's a story for you, Michelle. I'm not an elite runner, not by any standard, but we had a Navy running team in my region, and it was organised for one of the officers on the base. We went down to Canberra for a week, and we actually trained with Andrew Lloyd, and we actually did a running race with the AIS athletes.
That's amazing.
That was amazing. And they actually held seminars. I wasn't in that elite category. I was really just on the coattails of some really good runners on the Navy base, some really good runners. But really, it was amazing because at that time, I think Andrew Lloyd was basically at his peaks. Just trying to remember, I think he had some Commonwealth gold, great achievements, Commonwealth game gold, I think. And Monaghetti and all those sort of guys. But I just remember that going to the AIS, driving down there, and when you're young, you don't really appreciate that at the time. But looking back, oh my God, that was gold. Looking back, as we look back at running and leaning on people for knowledge and everything. That was a highlight. So the Navy for 5 years, that was a big part of my background leading up to.
How old were you then when you went into that, straight out of high school kind of thing? Is that what you did?
When I was 19, I had a bit of a gap after high school, did a few jobs and didn't really know what I was doing. And then the reason actually was my stepbrother joined the Navy about a year before me, and he had a lot of money in his back pocket and a nice new car. And I thought, hang on, this sounds really good. And he was meeting a lot of girls, so I thought that was the thing that really completed the deal for me. So look, at that 5 years, running was at the forefront, but also getting into a lot of trouble, as you are when you're a young boy in your 20s. But it was great. It was a great learning thing, and some elite runners on the base took me under their wings again, mainly through cross country. Cross country was probably a big thing back in those days in New South Wales on the base. And later, when I joined the ship for a couple of years, we used to. Here's another war story for you. On the ship, we used to run around the outside edge of the ship. So when you're at sea for a few weeks, along with going into port and having fun and, looking at the various cities and countries in Southeast Asia and New Zealand, to keep fit, with the PT guys, we used to just run around the outside edge of the ship. And so, that fitness, mind and body talking about, we certainly did play hard, but we certainly did keep ourselves, because that was really, as you know now, they really do encourage that now in the forces now. So, coming from West Australia, only lucky to be over 60 kilos as an 18, 19-year-old. Within a year, your first Christmas going back to hand some duty-free cigarettes to your mum who's waiting on the harbour. All of a sudden you're like about 10 kilos heavier. You're looking a lot, because you're getting those 3 square meals a day. And so as I say to my kids, look, if you don't know what you're going to do in life, if you want a bit of a gap year, if you don't have anywhere to work, or, I thoroughly recommend the forces. Just go and have a bit of fun like I did for a few years.
Yeah.
Meet some new people, go visit some new places and have some fun. Don't have too much fun, because you'll get in trouble like I did a couple of times, but that's another podcast for another day.
I can't imagine Tony getting into trouble.
But yeah, that running theme was, throughout that whole period. I played for a football team in Nowra. We were like, they hadn't literally won a game for about 5 years before I joined. And me and probably 4 or 5 other Navy sailor guys at the base, we hatched a plan to, go play at this club, and running was a big part of that, keeping fit over the winter like we do at LRC now down in Tassie. But it was really that fitness thing to, play hard and have fun while you're young, but also to keep fit and healthy. And
so can you clearly remember that being a motivator, like you're running because you want to be fit and healthy, or were there other things that were going on there that when it comes to the running?
I think at a young age, probably had some people that I looked up to. I had an older brother he joined finance and accounting at a young age, whereas I wasn't really ready for that. I wanted to have a bit of fun and follow my stepbrother into the Navy. But the running and fitness, I know social media is a big thing now for young people and how impressionable they are with those things. For me, it was the typecast Navy stuff about, Tom Cruise and all this sort of stuff, the prominent celebrities at the time. People wanted to wear those Ray-Bans, Ray-Bans, play beach volleyball with their tops off. And honestly, that's what we did. We actually, we do our cross-country runs. We'd hit the gyms pretty hard. Our base at HMAS Creswell was, if you know the area, it's sort of south of Nowra. They've got an officer training facility there. And around that Huskisson and areas, they've got white beaches. They're actually mentioned on some of the TV tourist shows. So imagine as a young 20-year-old, on base when you're off duty, just fishing, boating, running along those beach. I used to do a lot of barefoot running along the beach there to keep fit as well, and then go for a swim. And again, didn't realise till you get older at our age now how good that was. I mean, that was so amazing thinking back that now, how, it was a warmer weather obviously than Tassie, but not too much warmer. And it was really that beach culture, which, New South Wales has, and that Navy maritime culture as well.
Being outdoors, I suppose, too. That's much healthier than a lot of.
Look, I was honestly, not to put too fine a word, I was super fit because, I was eating a lot, but we were burning those carbs off because we were quite active. If we weren't playing footy in the winter, we were doing something in the summer, whether that was cricket or volleyball or actually indoor volleyball and some of the defence sporting games was actually quite serious business. So that was, trust me, it was sheep stations on everything, whether it was darts, pool on the bar, or beach volleyball or all of that. So yeah, so some of that stuff, just even some of the stuff I talk to my kids now and helping them with their health and encouraging them. A lot of that was through things I actually learnt through the Navy and eating properly.
Wow.
Probably the running and that stuff that was easy. It was actually probably learning about what foods to eat and having those 3 square meals while you're in the Defence Forces. Really learnt a lot of things out of that wholesome food and keeping healthy. I still don't have any health issues even now later in life, apart from probably things just as a result of working in an office, just being a bit stiff and sore and that sort of a thing, and wearing glasses like me. But generally I've got no really major ailments. It's really just building up that health and fitness and those good habits. So if I get a bit stir crazy if I can't go for a run 4 or 5 times a week. And as I said at the beginning of the podcast, with the older daughters with their boyfriends, they talk to me amazed at the running I'm doing, and I say, mate, you're young, make the most of it.
Right.
Got everything. Just got to make the most of that time. It's just use that time wisely.
That's amazing. All right, so you were in the Navy, and I didn't actually know that, so that's interesting for me. And there's probably heaps of other people who know you who didn't know that too, who will listen to this. When you finished being in the Navy, did you say it was about 5 years?
About 5 years, from 89 to 94. I only signed up for 4 years at the time. And I extended it for another year because I sort of crunched the numbers, and I was at sea at the time, and I talked to my my reporting officer, and he said, well, you can stay at sea if you want to extend for another, because I'd only been at sea if it makes sense for a year, and generally you do roughly a couple of years or 2.5 years before you have to go back to base. My job at that time was a writer, which is, what's a writer? Basically, we did payroll, accounts and personnel. But on the ship, when you go to sea and you do exercises, it's pens down and everything like that, all the different departments, you go into like exercise mode. So my job, because I was a writer, was damage control exercises. I'd stand next to the officer when we had damage control exercises, and we had a big board of the ship, and I'd write in the coloured pens, all the writing and relay messages and things. So that was interesting. And during other periods, our department, we'd always help out in the gun bay with the gunnery officers and the gunnery sailors. We would load shells, load shells, the big guns. That was our job. So during those exercises, you get into the culture of the gunnery guys. So the riders and the gunnery guys, we were always best mates outside because we sort of worked in tune with each other. And I don't know if you know this or not, but when you fire the guns, cordite comes out the back of the shells, and the smell of the cordite goes through all the gunnery areas. So let's just say, it doesn't matter how many showers you have when you come into port, you're smelling of cordite from those big shells, and it stays in your skin and everything like that. But it was you do, like I said, the Navy is probably the best thing for me for those 5 years. It really sort of settled me down a bit, and just taught me a lot of things. Going to sea, I'd always had that love of the ocean, which was really from Western Australia, which I didn't say before, but my stepfather and my mum, they actually lived quite close to the ocean at a place called Dawesville, which is just south of Mandarin, Western Australia. So Mandarin now, if you know it, it's basically like the Gold Coast of Western Australia. It's just so developed. It wasn't like that when I was growing up. It was really just a summertime town where all the city kids would come down, and all the city fishermen would come down and fish all our crabs out of the estuary, and then they go back up to the city at the end of the summer. So it's not like that now. It's really like it's like a mini Gold Coast for West Australia, and we're actually going back over there this Christmas coming up. So
that's exciting.
Which is fantastic. So
you left the Navy. What did you do?
Well, I didn't really know what I was going to do. Just before I left the Navy, I had a a young officer who took me under her wing, and she actually wanted me to be an officer.
Yeah.
And I signed all the paperwork, and I was going to go to RMIT and be a weapons electrical engineering officer.
Mm-hmm.
At the last minute, I backed out because I talked to my brother, who was a bit of a mentor, always a mentor at a young age. He was 3 years older than me, and talked to friends. And I just didn't want to sign up for another 9 years. And I'd always knew probably accounting or business or something similar to administration. I might do that. So I drew the line at the 5-year mark, which was in August 1994.
Mm-hmm.
So you're about to ask me, when did I meet my lovely wife? So let's just say in August 1994, I met my lovely wife. Now, if she listens to this, she's going to give me a whack on the bum if I get this wrong. But I met less than a year later in 1995. But basically, in that year's time, between August 94 when I got out and when I met a vet, I had a few different jobs, just tried a few different things. I met her while working at Temco. I reconnected with my father. That was the main reason for coming back down to Tasmania.
I was going to say, you came back to Tassie.
Yeah, but come back down to Tassie, reconnected with my father, lived with him for a bit.
Yep.
And then one of my Greek friends, who was a big party goer, said to me, Tony, there's 1,000 women that go out every Wednesday night in Launceston. And I still had that Navy blood left in me, and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to have to check this out, ladies' night. And if that's not a flag for a bull or whatever, but so let's just say I wasted a lot of my Navy retirement money, and by the time I met a vet, basically didn't have much money. I had a regular job over that year, but I've eventually just settled down, and I met a vet in Launceston, and then I moved out on my own for a while, and then gradually we sort of moved in together over time, and the rest is history. But yeah, that was it. And then, as you know, that was 1995. We didn't have our first child until 2000. So it was really just she was doing her studies and I was focusing on accounting and being a CPA and going through those various things.
So Yvette was doing studies as well as you. So and then you were studying to be an accountant from Temco, because we've kind of skipped to you were in the Navy. You came and stayed in Tassie and worked at Temco, and then obviously you decided to follow one of those business/accounting careers that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, probably over that time I got out of the Navy, and just thinking back now, probably IT between a few different jobs, and then I settled on Temco I can't remember what the date. It was in late 1994. 1994 was a big year for me, by the way, because the West Coast Eagles won their premiership. This story for you, Michelle. We've gone past this. Jesus, how much time you got? I was at sea when they won the premiership before I was due to leave the ship. And I didn't actually see the live vision until I got out of the Navy, and later just watched a replay and bought the videotape on VHS. So literally at sea during the grand final, there was me and one other guy that went for West Coast Eagles. We were sitting in the mess hall together on the ship, and the rest of the 250 to 300 guys on the ship, they were all going for Geelong, trust me, because they were barbing us during the week. And so,
wow.
So 1994 was a big year. I left the Navy in August. Didn't really want to know what I wanted to do. Wanted to, go back down to Tassie, reconnect with my father. And actually with the Greek community, reconnected with some of my father's Greek friends. Spent a bit of time with them. Developed an unhealthy tradition of eating souvlaki on a Saturday night, going out on the town and wasting a lot of money at the casino with my father and his Greek friends. But that's a story for another day. So that's something that wasn't for a fit health and mind. That was something that was going to be able to be maintained.
So you do your CPA stuff and you go off and do accounting. while you and Yvette are growing a family.
Basically, 94. So fast forward 3-4 years working at Temco, Yvette doing some studies and finishing her teaching studies and doing pracs and things. Fast forward to 1999 when I said to Yvette, we weren't married, didn't have any kids, let's take an adventure and move down to Hobart. So we moved down to 1999, and just before that, about 6 months prior to that, my auntie passed away, and left some money for me because, in Tassie, a lot of her relations had sort of not contacted, no one's helping her, and she left a little bit of money because she knew I wanted to buy a house, and I was quite serious with the vet at the time, and she helped me get that first deposit on a house.
Wow.
This was just before the property boom, as yourself and Simon would know. Where we had the twin boats, and John Howard and GST all happened, and all of a sudden our Quarry Road Launceston house was now not worth 80,000. It was now worth 240,000. So then we moved out to Perth, in Tasmania. But before we did that, 1999, we moved down to Hobart. I wanted to finish off my accounting degree. Worked at a couple of places for a couple of years. Worked at Tote Tasmania, worked at Garrison's. And it was basically a lot of young accountants working to 10 o'clock at night and all that sort of stuff. And actually, I did have some back problems during those years, because that's probably the 1 or 2 years where I was really committed to being a successful accountant and, working in finance, and probably my health did suffer. That was probably the 1 or 2 years where I had some back issues with narrowing disc space, and then saw a chiropractor, and then that's actually how I did actually restart running.
That's what I was going to ask, actually, whether you were, once you left the Navy, whether, running followed you through those different periods.
Yeah, and through that difficult period with my back, the chiropractor said, just relax, Tony, just relax. Trust me, we'll get there, because I wanted to get out and run straight away. And he said, because after the first session with him, with my narrowing discs, he said that you're going to feel great as soon as you walk out and within a day, but trust me, within a couple of days before you see me again, it'll narrow again, and you'll feel some of that nervous sort of nerve pain where you're sort of walking along. But gradually, over sort of 5 or 6 sessions, the very first thing I tried, Michelle, was just a bit tentatively. I started to do some beach runs. Again, the old Navy reference, with the shoes off, some beach runs with a vet. Poor as poor, couldn't even afford a toasted sandwiches at lunchtime back those days. We'd go down to Bellreeve and on the eastern shore of Hobart and just enjoy the Bellreeve beach. And I'd do some beach runs, and gradually over time I found that just maintaining the running, stopped going to the chiropractor, and I actually found working in the office combined with running actually kept that stuff at bay, and over time it's never come back. And I did stuff like, and even a vet in those days, she was walking over the bridge from the eastern shore into Telstra in Hobart where she worked. And then I started, one of my favourite runs was to run actually over the bridge from the eastern shore over the other side and then come back. Because when we lived on the eastern shore, I'd always look out my window and I'd see the bridge there, and I thought, that'd be amazing to get back into running and start running over that. And that was just like a mental thing for me. And that was fantastic. And then Kangaroo Point, that became a bit of a habit as well, running around there and putting the music on. The rest is history, just sort of gradually up the running from there and just maintain that. But probably not until LRC days, but I'll throw back to you because I'll share you some stuff around the LRC days where where I really did ramp up the running there, and that was when the kids were a bit older.
So it sounds like like a health reason, because as you said, sitting around an office isn't conducive to good health unless you're doing some sort of other movement outside of you're sitting at a desk, which is what you found. And that was, one of the reasons you started up running again. And you're in Hobart, and then you've come back up to Launceston by the sound of it.
Yeah, the reason we moved back up to Launceston was we had our first child, Isabella.
Yeah.
So we had her when we were in Hobart, living on the Eastern Shore, poor as poor. And then a couple of complications, and I thought, well, stuff this. Let's move back up to Launceston. Your mum's back up there. My dad's up there.
Yeah.
I really want you to be safe and healthy. So that was about Isabella and Yvette, and also just the family moving back up there.
Yeah.
Connect the extended family. And that was in I think that was 2001.
Mm-hmm.
Moved back up there, and to say Tasmania's a small place, here's another story for you. My first boss when I moved back up to Launceston, his son is now dating the boss that I had in 2001. His son is now dating one of the girls.
No.
20 years later, and we were having dinner with them the other night, just thinking back, oh my God, because as part of the job back in those days, back into accounting, we helped pitch him with promotional TV ads for the hotels, and actually from those ads from 20 years ago, Yvette was in those ads with Isabella, I think, in the pram at the time, from 20 years ago. But yeah, but that was it. Yeah, 99, 2000, moved back up to Launceston, 2001. And then the ATO happened in 2002. So the job came up. I previously looked at it back in 2000, and my boss at the accounting area down in Hobart, he gave me a pay rise because he didn't want me to go, me and this other young guy, because we were basically running the accounting down in Hobart, and they didn't pick someone else because pretty reliable. But after we moved back up to Launceston, the ATO job came up in 2002. And that was really conducive to running, Michelle, because I met one of my best friends over the last 20 years. He'd be embarrassed to hear this, but I won't mention his name, but let's just say he's got no hair. And but he worked at the ATO with me, joined with me, along with another one of my best friends over my career at the ATO. And me and him had a connection around running.
Yeah,
because he loved his gym. Loved his gym with his, big muscles and everything like that. And I like my gym as well, but I love my running more.
Yeah.
He played hockey. He used to play the hockey over every winter and was very successful with that. And I developed that running with the running club over the years. But we developed a habit of running. Once we struck up a conversation about it, I said, "Oh, do you want to run at lunchtime on Tuesdays?" And I said, "Oh, there's a shower here at the building." I said, "You sure?" I said, "Yeah, if we go for a 30-minute run, if we have a shower, when we get back, I reckon we can get back to our desk within the hour." And I said, "Okay, let's do that." And then gradually over the years, it would sometimes become a Tuesday and Thursday run. And that was really the platform for a lot of good at Launceston Running Club running, because I had that midweek lunchtime running. And even at Centrelink now, where I work, I make it a tradition to run Tuesday lunchtimes. I think it's me and another lady. Another lady's pretty much the only other person in the building that does it.
Well,
but it just helps that health, Michelle. Just again,
I know. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, and the bosses are really flexible with great. But that all started with the ATO, and a lot of that running at the ATO days, and even flexibility with the bosses. You'd say, "Oh well, I've got a marathon coming up. Yeah, okay, if I go for a 90-minute run at lunch and I'll work back or, start early the next week." And they're really supportive of that, and, developed a real strong, and we used to start initiatives like, this back in the pedometer days when health funds were really pushing the pedometers back in the early 2000s. So we'd really help promote those at the workplaces with our lunchtime running, and promote that, and encourage some of the other guys in the office.
So, just because Tasmania is so small, I used to work in Centrelink when I was in my 20s before I finished my teaching degree for quite a long time, through my 20s, about 8 years or so, on and off. And I used to run 4 days a week at work and lunch times. And at one stage we had 4 or 5 of us who would go out, including someone who still works at Centrelink, I believe, would come and run with me. It became quite a little hub back way back then. So we're talking about in the mid 1990s to late 1990s.
Yeah,
so
wow. Yeah,
so there had been a bit of a running thing going on, but it was a great way, I think, as you said, if you're going to be sitting down all day, to get your run in the middle of the day like that, and in a supportive environment with other people from your office, I think, I love that. I think that was great for me too, to build up my foundation for running when I was in my 20s. I loved it. So
you find that sometimes if I was training for a marathon, I'd do that Tuesday run, and sometimes I'd actually run into work on a Thursday, knowing that shower was there.
Yeah,
at the ATA days, run in, and sometimes you do like 17, 18 Ks. But as you know, Michelle, if you're doing the marathon training, that would be a given sort of midweek run, just to, before you even do your Sunday long run, to get those marathon results. You needed to do those midweek sort of runs. So, and they were really supportive of that, which was fantastic. I actually found I was more productive as a worker, because even with the lunchtime runs, you come back to the office, come back to your desk with a bit of spring in your step. You talk to the other guy about how you feel after running, say, yeah, thanks for the run, mate. That was really good. And we'd sort out the world's problems, and he'd do a lot of the talking and I'd do a lot of the listening. And but it was great. I didn't mind that. And he was a much better runner than me. He was a lot quicker than me.
Yeah.
So he was like a sub 4 minute runner at that time. He wouldn't be now, but and at that time, when it was early days Launceston Running Club, I needed someone like him to really push me, and he'd say, okay, let's go hard. And so it was really quite fun, and really helped me a lot. So he was fantastic. So that was really good throughout that period.
So with you, like, you started running again in after the Navy, and then in this office time, and you haven't really stopped, as far as I know, since then, apart from the odd injury or whatever, perhaps, I'm not sure. So what keeps you going? Like, do you think you have goals? Are you really goal driven? Like, is it because you want to run a marathon at a particular pace, or there's a particular race you want to train for? Or if you didn't have those things, would you still, do you think, head out the door and regularly to stay fit?
Yeah, I think for me, running is a lifestyle thing. Like, some people ask me in the office, are you training for something? I say, yeah, I'm going to have a go at the marathon in Melbourne in October, but COVID might hit me, and that mightn't happen. But I'll still be running 4 or 5 days a week, because I just find I feel better, Michelle. I find that my sleep's better, my general health's better. It's the main thing I do. I don't really play any other sport. I'm not really I sort of jokingly say to my wife and her friends over the years, I don't smoke, gamble, or drink really. I do actually. Funnily though, Michelle, I am drinking a bit extra as I'm getting older.
What?
So yes, I'm actually drinking a bit too much, but and I'm doing things that I'm probably a bit more relaxed about my running as I'm getting older.
Okay.
I'm probably, because of that lifestyle thing, not a goal driven thing like it was when you knew me, when you were president, and with that guy at the ATO, I was saying to him, look, I need to get quicker. I need to, get really good and he was smashing me on our lunchtime runs, literally sweat. But now I'm doing I want to do the Melbourne Marathon in October, and if it's, planning for that, we're going to go over and probably take 1 or 2 of the kids with us. I'm not sure, but I'll sometimes have 2 or 3 beers or half a dozen beers on a Saturday night with friends, and I'll still do a 30 to 35K run on a Sunday morning. Now,
wow.
Back when you knew me and you were president of the running club, I would never do that. That was but I've just learned by being relaxed. I've probably changed. It is a lifestyle thing. That's the main reason. I'm going off tangent again, but it is a lifestyle thing for me. I do I do actually love running a lot. I
Mm.
do. I'm probably a bit more fanatical about it than I want to admit. I do look at my Garmin during my run way too many times. I do look at my Strava more than probably anything else. And as I'm getting older, I probably use things that have got data in them about my running. I spend more time looking at it than what I did in my 30s and 40s.
Wow.
And you probably be near me where I just probably hit stop on the end of the run, be pleased with myself and just move on. Well, now I'll hit stop on a run and I'll dwell on that and say, and then I'll look at it during the week at work on Strava. Strava's been a great thing for me over the last probably 5 or 10 years. I was a bit late to the party.
Yeah.
Um, um, Actually, some people that I haven't mentioned as a bit of a lifestyle thing, it has been a bit of a community thing, a bit of a connection, a common connection with other people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just before you wrap up, I'll probably mention there was a period probably 2 or 3 years ago where I made a really strong connection with, and they'll laugh at this, if not cry, but um, after running for many years, I did connect with a few Perth local runners who are, two of them are no longer Perth residents.
Mm-hmm.
And they were asking me questions and calling me coach about running.
Yeah.
And I thought, these guys are having a lot of fun and giggling while they're running along the highway, getting up in the early hours. And I was running with them. And it just reminded me at that time that, running doesn't have to be too serious. Yeah, you want to get your PBs, but you can have a lot of fun and,
Yeah.
still, connect with other people. So that was Joe, Justin, and Job, the three
Yep.
J's as I call them. So there was probably we'd sort out a few world problems during our runs. Job was the jovial guy that would push the limits and really be the encourage everyone to meet him at the gorge, at some
Mm-hmm.
ridiculously early hour at some place that I wouldn't normally go, but I just because he was such a bubbly personality, and so was
Yes.
Joe. Joe,
Yeah.
as you know, bubbly personality as well, and Justin as well.
Mm-hmm.
I would just literally, it was just me holding the popcorn, listening to those guys throw barbs at each other about the football. With Joe being Collingwood supporters, Justin Carlton, and myself being West Coast. And over the years, we'd ride the success of the various teams.
Yeah.
And we've been camping and gone off on runs together as well. So that was a nice surprise by all those guys in Perth. Still connected with those guys and love those guys. And Joe, he's in Melbourne now. He messages me every now and then and asks me, which I've never taken him up on. He asked me to do like live streams while I'm actually running on a midweek run, which I've never, but I should do. But he's just, example of, just that bubbly personality and just makes running fun. And through a lot of those years, going back to when I first joined at LRC, Daniel Sexton was that experienced LRC runner. He was actually the person that got me into running all that time, got me returning to running after when the kids were young and I had those back issues and really did help. And, to turn the clock back to that time, to tell a funny story, a vet actually told Daniel that, because we didn't really know about handicapping, but he said, oh, yeah, Tony can do 5Ks in 15 minutes. And this was the iconic Riverside run, which they've taken off the calendar. It was actually one of my favourite runs because we could jump in the pool after the run. And about 3 laps into the 4 laps, I turned to a vet on that very first race. I just said, that time you told Daniel, I don't think we'll get that 15 minutes because I've got a lap to go and it's only 15 minutes now. So, but again, it's just, connecting to the people. I think that's the common theme, with the healthy mind and body. I think connecting with those people is probably a big takeout for me, with that running being a common thing, just those new friends that you meet. Even on Saturday, just talking to a few people about, how they were going with their runs, who's injured, who's not, what they're training for, me sharing, them asking me how I'm going, am I training for anything, all that sort of stuff. I think it's that mind stuff that you're not sort of stuck on your own, but you are sharing that conversation with those other people. It's that nice, as I shared on that running race on Saturday, it's a night, you've got that nice feeling of goodwill when you are, opening that conversation with those other runners, because you even on the weekend when Yvette and I were in Sydney away from the kids, of course I made the mistake of mentioning that I was a runner at a running shop and I was buying some things. This lady literally wanted to talk to me for about half an hour about her marathons and things, and I was sharing stuff. So it's just, running is just that common connection. I think it is.
Have a story.
It is health. It is healthy in terms of your body, but it really is that nice social activity. You can make it a social. I'm not over the top social with my running, as you know. I'm a bit quieter, but I think, connecting with those Perth guys over those years now, and two of those are me down here. That was a really nice period, and our kids were similar ages, so we connect over through little athletics. They didn't really know much about Launceston Running Club, and so just helping them with their running, and then they've gone gangbusters from there, and achieved some really great achievements throughout that period. So it's been fantastic.
Yeah, it's been awesome. In fact, a lot of people talk about how awesome the connections are with the people that they meet through running, as you just said, even in the store. So it was kind of cool, that little story. Have there been times in your life where you, apart from physically, where you've had an emotionally tough time over whatever's going on in your life, and you found that running has helped? Have you turned to running for that reason, where you've just gone to, clear your head or whatever?
Probably one of the kids. We went through a bit of a tough period with her health, and she's come out of that gangbusters, and we'd look back at that period now and we'd laugh about it. But we went through a real tough period, and I just remember, again, those three blokes that I mentioned before, they were checking in with myself and Yvette during that, and that was a really tough period. And the running and those family connections and friend connections through the running club and through running helped us through that. But just generally in terms of the mental health, I think I say I'm a manager now at Centrelink, and been a manager on and off probably for the last 3 or 4 years, most of that period. Mental health is probably something we do talk about a lot more in the last probably 2 years because of COVID and that isolation and things. And back at that period when we were having those difficulties with the health of one of our kids, I think, having that fit mind and body, but also the running in itself, just those connections with the social connection, the family connection, some of those people that reached out to us was really nice and really, really helped us throughout that period, and were really supportive, which was fantastic. It was muchly appreciated. But going back to when I first did join the running club with those narrowing disc space issues that I had back in the early 2000s, late 90s, that was actually really scary for me at the time. I didn't actually know what that was. And the chiropractor said to me at the time, said, "Oh, no, don't panic. It's just, your discs are narrowing." And it was basically because I was overworking. I was working 8 hours a day. I was, working, being a young Turk, working to use the term, just working to 9, 10 o'clock at night because it was month end. And plus I was trying to study after work as well. And I wasn't really looking after my body. And so, that keeping that running's helped. But in the later years, through those ups and downs, when you've got kids and various difficulties there, youngest child has got type 1 diabetes, and that was a real big challenge for us. And God love him. And but it's and we're just trying to role model the behaviours for him, that you've got a challenging life. God, I'm going to cry. But setting up some, just educating him on, you've got a massive life challenge, but we can share some of those lessons we've had, and with his health, and he loves his soccer, so he's learning how to manage his diabetes, play soccer. Because I know you may have done a podcast in the past with someone at the running club that might have had type 1 diabetes. So it's that sort of challenge that people have around that. That's and just that in itself, how that's affected Yvette and I, in those early years, when he was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, we basically weren't getting much sleep, but more so not thinking about my health, but more my mental health, going for those runs and encouraging Yvette to go for those walks/runs has been fantastic. And I'll mention one other thing too, jokingly. We've got these two Labradoodles the last couple of years, and I wasn't really a dog person, but I'll admit I probably love the dogs more than the kids. So I don't know if I've really got to my age, but they've really helped with the mental health coming home to them. And, it's another two kids you've got to look after, but it really does. They do repay you, and their love, they do give back to you. So really learning to be a dog person, and that's really been a nice part of our life. As you think with 5 kids, we wouldn't want that busy stuff back, but you do miss that family stuff with, 2 of the girls effectively being close to 100% moved out. Moving into that sort of period where we're dog people now, got a couple of Labradoodles. Slowly can't take them out for jogs with us if they don't trip us up. But I think going back to your question, I think it's really helped with the mental health for me personally. I think that's probably been the biggest benefit, just the mental health, just resetting. Being a manager as well, you do just through my work, you are supporting staff that are going through difficult times themselves. So sometimes you take on board, you to be human, you take on board some of that yourself. So you need for me personally, I think the running just helps me mentally just reset.
Like a good outlet.
Yeah, it's a good outlet and just freshens myself up. With that as well, I do love my music probably more than any other runner I do know. I do slip the headphones in, and Yvette and I do talk to each other about our playlists and things like that. And we do love our music, and I think music and the running's a great connection. And again, the mental health, just thinking about the tunes while you're running, I think that's a great reset for me as well. I don't always listen to it on my very long runs, but sometimes I'll have it in my pocket, and in the back half of the long run, I'll just put the headphones on just to finish off the run. And it's a great resource as well, just to connecting with the running.
Puts you in a different space, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, I love that. There's another connection there. Like, I have 5 children as well. We only have 2 kids at home now, but we just got a puppy. So it's been like, we already had a dog, but I feel I understand exactly what you're saying. That kind of connecting to the puppy, and it would be like, why did we get a puppy after we've, suddenly, not suddenly, but things are slowing down at home, not having 5 children at home now. It's and then we put a puppy in there because obviously we wanted to make it busy again. It's crazy. Anyway, I don't know why we do that, but I love it all the same. So I totally understand where you're coming from there. Have you had any, apart from obviously the back thing, which wasn't a running injury per se, have you had any running injuries?
Yeah, I was thinking about that before the podcast. I was thinking, thought you might ask me that. Probably the only thing I've had, luckily, is really just the old office ITB hip flexor tightness. So I did go through a period, it was unplanned, but the kids were doing taekwondo here in Perth with one of the local legends here, Roger, that we met through Little Athletics. And when the kids were young, they were doing taekwondo. And actually Job, I think, and some of Joe's kids did. And Justin, actually, he did taekwondo as well. But I actually found just stretching and gymming and doing that 1 or 2 or 3 years taekwondo, just kicking, even though I was obviously not as loose as the kids, just that stuff really loosened up the ITB injury and the hip flexor tightness. But generally, I've had no real health concerns. I've been really good, touch wood. I've had no knee issues. Funnily, I should say this, trust it to be a non-running injury, and it wasn't because I drank too much wine. We're walking at a winery, Yvette and I, getting into a friend's new car, his Ford Ranger, and the wind was coming strongly across the car. And I was putting one leg into the car, about to put the left leg in, and the door, the heavy, swung against my knee.
Ouch.
And still less than a year later, that's the only injury I've got. I'm still running long Ks and that it's not a problem, but I can still feel it now, just in the core and the bone. And a vet being a nurse, she said, "Oh, you've got a bit of bursitis." I had a bit of bursitis for 2 or 3 months between roughly, I think October and Christmas last year, and it really actually scared me. I thought, "Jesus, is this going to be the end of the running?" Because I've had a couple of wines and slammed a car door against my leg. And that would do more to my mental health than anything else. But slowly over time, and again, another story. You know how I can waffle.
No, no,
While
not
I
at all.
couldn't get back into running too quickly, I actually discovered Swift and stationary bike riding. So as I've talked to Justin because he knew about it, and I googled it, and bare bones budget set up, paid for the Swift, and I'm probably going to start using it again soon. And I have been using it every now and then. It was just, but at that time when I wasn't running, Michelle, I was actually on the Swift bike, 3 or 4 times a week.
Wow.
And that actually led to me lobbying my wife for me to get a semi-good road bike, which, as you know, it's always a hard compromise. So as Simon would know, it's about getting something she wants and me getting what I want.
Yep.
But I've got the road bike, but now it's sort of more. I'm running more than cycling again. But thank God it's got back to almost 100%. So it was really scary at that time. But pretty much, really, the only running injury apart from that has been just that ITB stuff. At Ross Marathon September last year, I hadn't trained as much as what I'm training now, and actually that ITB down one of my legs, I literally could not run, and I couldn't even finish the marathon, and my pace dropped off really badly. And that's an example how sometimes for me, because I'm working in the office and not looking after my hip flexors sometimes and being a bit inflexible and stiff, that's where that's probably the biggest impact on my running, my health, but no real general health concerns, apart from probably drinking a bit too much in my lady. But I haven't put on too much weight. My 16-year-old boy wants to be Arnold Schwarzenegger at the moment. He's going through a gym period. So after this year's marathon, I'll probably keep running like I normally do because I can't stop fully, but I'll try and help him with his gym stuff because a few years ago when I did take a year off the running club, I did go through a gym period myself, learnt a lot through that and how to keep strong and healthy. Still run a bit, but focus more on the strength because he played footy for the first time this winter and done a great job.
Yeah.
And he just wants to, he's like me at that age before I joined the Navy, I was talking to you about before, I was so skinny. It's about his physique and everything. I said, no, trust me, mate, if you eat more, you'll put on weight more, and just over time you'll but I'm just educating him on the right food to eat because now compared to 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 15 years ago, junk food is a lot cheaper than what it is compared to those times. Like, after a run nowadays, I'll still try and keep it reasonably healthy, but have a treat. But these days with the kids, they're just so accessible with the junk food. And again, that's a bit of a health topic that we try and, you can have your treats and things, but, try and help them out with that stuff as well. Make sure they're
making the choices.
Yeah.
Making it more as a treat rather than after every kind of run or whatever you've done. If you always have a treat, then it's not necessarily a treat, depending on how you look at it, I suppose. When do you think you first called yourself a runner?
Probably not until I joined the running club and I did my first marathon, I think.
Okay.
I actually won marathon before I joined the running club in Hobart. I didn't finish. I didn't know how to train for a marathon, and I didn't really train for it. I went hell for leather for about 30 Ks, and then I sat on the curb next to the ambulance and had to ring a vet. And the ambulance guy, I can't remember how I got back to the start, but anyway, that didn't end very well. But pretty much, I think, probably when I joined the running club, and started talking to those experienced guys, and I struggled the early 1 or 2 years at the running club where anything over probably 10 Ks, I really struggled.
Okay.
And it was only talking to the experienced guys where I learned, okay, you need to up your weekly kilometres. And then we did masters for a short period of it and I just have a bit of fun. And then I met, as you know, Gary, but I met Gary through local his Perth connections as well, through his family, through little athletics as well. And I basically pulled him aside one day and just said, look, mate, I'm sick of stuffing up in these marathons. Can you give me a program where I don't have to think? I'm just going to do whatever you tell me. And then it was just tapping his knowledge. He was probably the one that probably mentored me a lot with my running.
Yeah.
And he actually helped train Isabella when she was really good with her race walking in her younger years, through little athletics when she was getting in state teams, and Harry when he was 12, 13, 14, when he was become an amazing 800-meter runner. We were leaning on Gary a little bit and just asking him what he should be doing and stuff like that. I haven't really talked to him for a long time actually, but I would like to go back to masters as I'm getting a bit older. Not because I'm a good runner or anything like that, but I think again it's just that connecting with other runners that are doing masters. Just leaning on the knowledge of some of those really experienced guys. Because I always think every winter at the running club, I always try to think to do something new or learn something new to bring in. And, I've brought in a lot of things over the years, whether it's cross training. I used to do stairs in my lunchtime runs back in the ATO days. That was something me and the other guy we came up with. That was something we came off on our own back and start the gorge runs in themselves, running slow to run fast. That was didn't really know what that meant. But now as I'm getting older, in the last probably 5 years, learning about the low heart rate training, all that stuff that we weren't really doing. I wasn't doing, 15, 20 years ago. That's but I probably called myself a runner probably from about a year into that LRC period where I started to do that marathons after training for those.
And how long do you think you'll run for in your life?
As long as I can keep running, I think as long as I can physically do it. I do see those guys on Instagram that come up on my feed and they're shuffling along in their 90s. I hope to be one of those guys, just to
Cliff Young shuffle.
And I think the reason I can do it is because I'm not running for an event or anything like that. It's more just that lifestyle thing to keep healthy and still enjoy it. Sometimes when I don't want to walk out the door, or turn the knob, I just think, you have to love it and enjoy it to be able to keep up the 4 or 5 runs a week. I do love my music, so I think the music keeps me in the game as well, just as a bit of a mental health thing while I'm running. And I know guys my age, a lot of them go fishing and play golf and do the other things. That's not for me. I'm not ready for golf yet until I retire. But and I have played 10-pin bowls and lawn bowls before, and I did like that. So I could see myself doing those things. But I think running while my legs there's no injuries, I think that'll be the thing for me to do. I'll just keep doing that for many years to come.
Do you mostly run by yourself? I know that you do run by yourself because I've seen you on the side of the highway plenty of times. And obviously we've talked about the Perth crew and how you've done, for a while there was lots of running with them. But my understanding is you mostly do your training by yourself these days.
Yeah,
Would that be right?
Yeah, that's mostly because a lot of the running guys never really lived out at Perth. And when the kids were young, when I was at the running club, I couldn't really justify driving into town and then running. Although when I was running with Job and Joe and Justin, meeting people in town, I was doing that at that time.
Yeah.
But I know there have been those social sort of running groups that do meet in town. I just can't do that because the kids were younger. And but I'll be honest, I am mostly pretty shy, unless you get me talking on one of these things. But I do live inside my head a lot, so I do sort out the world's problems in my head as I'm running and listening to my music. And I don't actually think about my running most of the time when I'm going on those long runs. I really do think about, okay, what's going on with kid number 2, that issue he's got, how can we sort that out? Or, one of my team members at work, having trouble with this, how can we help this? Or I'm thinking about something else, the West Coast Eagles lost by a point last night or something silly like that. So I will go off into the nethers in my own mind. So that's probably an attribute of my personality. I know other people don't do that, but it's just because, to give you an example, back in those ATO days where I talked about Rod, where I used to run with him, he was very outgoing. Mm-hmm. So he was a complete opposite to me. So in that lunchtime run, he'd be running sub 4 minute pace. He'd be talking through almost the whole run. He'd be pumping me up, and I was literally puffing my guts out to try and actually respond to anything he was saying to me. So I'd actually, over time, I'd say to him, look, don't expect me to respond to anything. I apologise, mate. I am listening, but I'm just trying to keep up with you and all that. But through the Yafflers, when Justin and Job and Joe, when they were running, we did talk a lot during that, and just we didn't really look at the watch. We didn't really look at our pace. It was more about that slow running to run fast, and that's where some of those benefits. And I've probably learned a lot about that over the years. Where 5 days a week, I used to smash my legs early years at the running clubs. I really did not have any easy days because I used to think, because firstly, I didn't have much spare time with the 5 kids, so I couldn't justify going for an hour run for, 8 or 9 Ks and real easy pace. If I did 8 or 9 Ks, I'd do that at 4.5 minute pace or something, really quick, so I could get back to the kids. So it was only now, as the kids are moving out of home, it's unheard of for me. I'll go for a long run. I'll even stop off at a petrol station, buy a Powerade, walk for a bit, and I'll keep running. In my 30s and 40s, that would be unheard of. I'd wrap myself over the knuckles if I did something like that.
Oh, that's funny.
Well, last time we were in Hobart, staying with one of the girls' boyfriend's parents, so the future in-laws. I said to them, "Oh, look, I've always wanted to run along that Taroona Road back through the back way through Hobart. I know it's a bit dangerous, but," and they say, "No, don't do it, Tony. You'll get hit by cars or whatever." No, I'm an experienced runner. So I ran all through there, and literally, we miscommunicated. I said to her, I thought she was picking me up at the casino at 8:39, and of course, she said, "No, Tony, I was leaving Howden from 8:30, so I'm not going to get there." So literally on that run, I took no drinks with me, but I stopped off, because now I'm getting older. I don't really care. I'm a lot more relaxed. I'll just stop off and have a walk. I'll gander to people. I'll have a drink, stop off at a shop. And I've learned over recent years to just enjoy that a bit more and just cherish it, because you never know, around the corner, you don't know, you might slam another door on your leg or whatever it is and get injured and you can't run. So
it sounds like a beautiful run. It's a lovely road, that one. Although it is, I guess, if you do it at a time when there's not many cars on the road, it's pretty good.
Yeah, well, the funny thing was, on that day, I was opposite the casino, and I said to her, "I'll meet you in town in 5 minutes." And she said, "Oh, I'm not going to be ready." So I ran through the middle of Hobart, and I thought, God, where am I going to go now? I'm just going to have to keep running. So then I went through North Hobart, and I texted her again, and she said, "Oh, no, we're still not ready. George hasn't finished his breakfast yet." So I just kept, and in the end, I said, "Bloody hell, I might as well meet you at the deck." And so it was like this run that was only going to be 22 Ks. It ended up being something like 32, 34 Ks.
Oh, wow.
Really slow. It actually ended up being an unplanned, really good run. Really set myself a good base for some of my long runs. So,
oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
That was lucky it did. All right. So, Tony, tell me, if you hadn't, got back into running, especially, as an adult after Navy experience and stuff, what do you think your life would be missing if you hadn't, adopted running as a lifestyle? Probably is a better way to put it.
I think it was, through the little athletics years with the kids. That's probably the biggest thing. I think the kids talk to me even now about role modelling those healthy habits. I think life would be a lot different. I don't actually think the kids would be doing little athletics. So if I hadn't have been a runner
Yeah.
and coached them to do it, we didn't push them to do any of that. It was just really little athletics was really a thing about having fun. Although some of the people listening to this podcast might say, "I remember you, Tony. You used to yell from the hills at your kids," and I used to say, "I'm not yelling at your kids. I'm yelling at my kid." Okay, like that. But so it was things like little athletics, and we've met a lot of friends through Launceston Running Club. I mean, when we first joined the running club, it was very quiet. No one really talked to us, and then over time, we slowly made connections to people, and like yourself and others, the presidents and all that over time, and we got more involved with it and volunteered with the marshalling. And so we wouldn't have made all those friends through the running club. Those people that I met through work that ran with me, those strong connections. I think I would have a lot more health issues if I wasn't running, especially working with, because my job that I'm doing and have done for the last probably 20 years in the public service is very sedentary. It's a very sedentary job. So you're basically sitting at your chair looking at a screen, apart from your coffee breaks and things, for like 7.5 hours a day. So if you're not doing that stuff outside of work, whether it's running or something similar, then you're going to be in strife as you get older. So I think that's probably the biggest benefit. I think it's the health. Probably the biggest health thing is probably the mental health. I think for me, it's really kept me sane over the years with the kids and just resetting. It's a cheap thing. The most expensive thing you need to invest in is a pair of running shoes, and apart from that, it really is a cheap hobby that keeps your body and your mind healthy.
Is there, before we get to the beginner running tips, is there anything that we haven't talked about in regards to running that you wanted to share?
Probably watches and shoes. I'll probably say took me a long time to find the right sort of shoes to wear with running, because early years I was buying shoes with arches in them and had sore feet, and then Daniel had come up to me and saying, "Why the hell are you wearing those ridiculously looking shoes, Tony? They're trail shoes," or something silly like that, he'd say to me. So I think the shoes are important, and just leaning on people that know a lot more about it than you. Like even now with that knee injury I had with the car door, I'd forgotten about Brooks, that I was wearing Brooks in my early years, my early marathons. I used to, because they never used to wear out, and I found these GTS Brooks Adrenaline, and I'd forgotten that they were like running on a pillow. And like I put those on at Rebel Sports in Hobart, and I thought, I've forgotten how good these bloody shoes are. And then I put them on. And honestly, Michelle, it was like I didn't have an injury. Like I had probably 60-70% recovered, but it actually, those shoes literally got me back into running, and I've since stuck to the Brooks since then.
Amazing.
Probably with the running watches, I think I had a very clunky Nike running watch, my first running watch, and then over time I graduated to a Garmin. I think just knowing, doing your research, again, leaning on the running club guys, what they wear, and they were all saying to me, "Look, Tony, Garmin's are very reliable. They don't have all the bells and whistles, but I think the running watch and the running shoes, they're probably the two things." Probably before those two is probably the music for me. Number one, the music's probably helped me a lot. Putting the music on late in marathons where I've been hitting the wall, putting a bit of Pearl Jam on, or Van Halen, or whatever it is. Honestly, that has gotten me through.
Rock you to the end.
Yeah, absolutely. That's helped me finish off a lot of tough runs. So yeah, I really love that. So yeah,
that's super cool. I love it. All right, we have kept you a really long time, and I have really enjoyed learning heaps more about you. It's really exciting, and you tell such great stories. Before we go though, do you have some tips for beginner runners? So we've already heard about shoes and watches. Is there anything, if somebody comes up to you, you've obviously been called a coach by the Perth crew. What kind of tips would you give beginner runners to get them started?
when I met the Yafflers, like Justin, Joe and Joe, when they asked me for a tip every now and then, like I had with the two out of the 5 kids that were really good runners, it was about building up the base, that stuff all around, which I learned from the elite guys, which was build your base first, build those foundations first, and then get faster later, basically. That was some of Garyisms and that as well.
Yeah.
Like he used to say to me, "You're running too fast on your Sundays, Tony. Just slow down, do those long runs at conversational pace." You know, all that gold that, you know, that's probably the number one tip. And that actually really helped me with Harry and Isabella. When they were 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds, I said to them, I just want you to go for a 15-minute run on a Sunday and I'll buy you an ice cream at the Perth shop at the end. How's that sound? I don't want you to run quick. I'll run alongside you. And they did that. And literally that was what got them through, you know, onto school teams.
Wow.
No speed work or anything. I did with Harry, we did get really, really serious and we did do hill repeats and intervals and tempo runs. And again, I didn't know any of that stuff. That was really from, again, leaning on those LRC runners about, you know, how do you get quicker? Tony, try some 400s for your marathon. They're a good distance. So what do you mean? What speed do you do that at? You know, you're like doing you just do it at your sub 5K PB pace, all that stuff, and have your rest in between and all that stuff. And probably the second tip for beginner runners is your fueling. Your fueling to do a marathon, doesn't matter how much training you do and run slow to run fast stuff that I just mentioned then, your fueling is really important. So for me, that was a real challenge for me because like some of my kids have inherited, which is the reason why I'm reasonably skinny, is that with sweeter stuff that goes through me a bit. So not gonna tell any of those gory stories, but I've experimented some of my early marathons with gels and water and electrolytes, and I'm actually finding now as I'm getting older, those electrolytes and gels, they make a massive difference to my performance now on a long run. Like if I'm practicing race pace, it is quite noticeable. So, I suggest just, you know, hydration, working out how many carbs you're going to have per hour, how are you going to get those carbs. So whether that's, for me, I had trouble with gels with my stomach and my bowels. So I developed a thing where I found a gel that was not going to disagree with my stomach, which was the Enduro ones, which was the triathlon ones, I think, because they were more runnier. And I had barley sugars. Just discovered barley sugars by accident, just put heaps of barley sugars and it basically replicated. And then plus I'd have electrolyte drinks with some water during the marathons. And probably the third thing I probably developed out of all of that was training on water, and don't train too much with your electrolytes, gels and barley sugars. Practice them, you know, your race day strategies, you know, once, twice, 3 times, but don't train with those things all the time. So I just found over time on the actual day of the race, when you give yourself the gels, the barley sugars and the electrolyte drinks every second drink station, you get more of a kick out of it.
Okay, because your body's not sort of adjusted to it already.
And it was that mental kick out of it as well, just getting that sugar hit as well. And someone told me that, I can't remember if that was Gary or someone else, and I'm actually teaching Harry with his footy and his running last few years, and he found that was a good tip as well, just to train on water during the week. And and I have talked to one of the girls' boyfriends who's a really good footballer, and he said, he trains on water and rarely uses electrolyte drinks unless he needs it. And I think, for me, that's something that's given me a bit of a kick as well.
It's kind of similar to, I had a coach a couple of years ago who's a low carb, like keto type athlete. And the only time they have like a lot of carbs, they don't have carbs at all, they just have low carbs. But when they have a lot of carbs, it'll be in a run. And it's for that reason that their body gets more of a kick out of the carb. It becomes instant energy instead of doing other things when our bodies are more used to having a high level of carb, like all the time, which I thought was interesting. So sort of similar effect, sort of tricking your body that way.
So I found
interesting.
I found that through a few marathons, and actually there was one sports drink I did find. It was by accident again. No one recommended it to me. I was just trialing it. Again, Endura. I found this Endura electrolyte drink that was not too sweet.
Okay.
So again, finding that electrolyte drink or carb drink that's not going to disagree with your stomach. It was just not too sweet. And going back to the Bruny Island days when we did that as a family, that was a family affair that I haven't mentioned. I'd do the first half when the kids were young, the whole first half. I put the Endura drink and I'd have that at 8, 12, 16. And that sports drink would just give me so much kick because I'd never trained with it. I knew it wouldn't disagree with my stomach. Yeah. And then I had my music on and I was so pumped up because I knew the kids were waiting for me in a vet. And then Isabella would always be the first one, the oldest child, that would tag me the first time.
Yeah.
And I've actually got a famous photo of her when one of the first years she did it, when she was at the peak of her powers, when she was 13 or 14, and she was tagging me. And I was pushing hard to tag her as quick as I could. And again, actually, with the Yafflers, with Job and Justin, Job and Joe, sorry, that was a tradition. Even Joe and Job had done that Bruny Island more than I've done. That was something that we did together. We went down there and camped, and that was, along with LRC, that was a great tradition to go down there as a family. And that, again, that was a running family thing to do. And
Oh, I love that. Oh, we could just keep talking, but we can't. So, Tony, thank you for sharing so much. I do appreciate it. We've got all your tips, and there's lots of good stuff in there that people can learn, including, going to if you don't know what to do, go and ask somebody who has already been there before you, basically, whether it's a running coach or someone else in the running community with some more experience than you have. And there's always people out there who have more experience than us. That's what I've found. So go find them and, get some good advice and test and measure, like you said. I love it. So, thank you for being on. I appreciate your time. Don't hop off. I'll say goodbye to you off the recording as well. But thank you. Like I said, I've loved learning more about you and your journey.
Thanks, Michelle. Really enjoyed it, and happy to share the tips and tricks. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you for listening to the Fit Mind, Fit Body podcast. I'd love to talk to you about your running journey. So send me a message on Facebook or on the website, and let's do it. For a bunch of resources on mindful running that will help you get and stay mentally and physically fit, head over to the website fitmindfitbody.co, and I'll see you there. Plus, I'll be back here in your podcast player a few times a week. Hit subscribe now so that you don't miss an episode. And before you go, I'd really appreciate it if you'd leave a review. It'll help more people to find the podcast and get inspired to start running. I'll see you soon. Bye.